In this video, I'm going to explain what a death cross is in the stock market. On my screen here is a stock chart, and this is for Apple. And each of these price bars represents one day of price activity. So a death cross involves two moving averages, and I want to start by explaining what moving averages are. So first of all, this blue line is a 50-period moving average, and if you look up here, there's a blue number up here, and you can see it shows 189.56, and as I mouse over different price bars, that number changes. And what that number is, it's first of all, it's the number associated with this blue line right here at any given point on the chart, and that number represents the average of the last 50 days of price activity for, in this case, Apple. And so basically it's just an average of the last 50 days. Now with the golden cross, there's a 50-period moving average, which is this blue line, and there's also a 200-period moving average, which is this purplish line here. And so the 200-period moving average, it's a calculation of the last 200 days of price activity. And so the 50-period moving average, it's considered the faster one, meaning that it reflects price activity that's more recent, because since it's only looking at the last 50 days, it's looking at a more recent period relative to the 200-period moving average, which is inclusive of almost an entire year's worth of price activity. And it's measuring in trading days, so 50 trading days for the 50-period moving average and 200 trading days for the 200. So a death cross is what happens when the 50-period moving average crosses under the 200-period moving average. And the idea is that if recent price activity, which is measured by that 50-period moving average, if it has a downward momentum, which is bringing down the 50-period moving average, then that could be a signal to steer clear of that particular stock, or even to consider shorting it. So if you see a death cross on a chart, you know, there's kind of this idea that perhaps the stock price is going to keep going down. Perhaps that's an indication that there's downward momentum and that the stock price could keep going down. That's at least some of what I would call public perception of what a death cross signals or what it could mean. And you can see here that in this case, a death cross occurred. So it occurred right here. This is what, March the 13th. And so if you had, say, shorted this stock, you can see that it did start to go down here. It's a little bit sideways, you know, when you look at the whole thing, but then right toward the end here, it starts to go down. And so, yeah, if you had sold this, you know, let's say you owned Apple and you sold it when the death cross occurred, you might have avoided some of this downward movement. Or if you had shorted it, you might have profited from this slightly downward movement here. The question, of course, is, does that actually hold true? Like, do death crosses indeed signal downward movement in stock prices are forthcoming? And that's one of the things that we do at Stock Market Guides. We do research. And so what we do is, for any given stock, we'll tell you, here's how many times a death cross is set up in the past for this stock, and here's how the stock performed after it happened. And that way you're not going based on, you know, what you may have just simply heard as an idea that a death cross could signal a downward movement in price. Of course, there's a million ideas on how to invest in the stock market, and it's very hard to tell what's real and it gives you a bona fide edge and what's just hype. There's just so much out there, and that's what we do at Stock Market Guides. We try to cut through the hype and just give you the facts. And so what we do is we go through each stock and we say, how many times has this set up for a death cross in the past, and how did the stock perform thereafter in each of those cases? And that way, when you see a death cross come up, or any other major trading strategy, you can say, well, this is how it's performed historically. And that way, it's not about hype. It's not about a sales pitch on something you should be investing in. It's just data. It's just facts. And then you can make the call. Is this something you want to pursue or not? Now, let's just take a look for fun. How did this death cross turn out for Apple? So I'm going to advance the chart forward, and you can see here already that this supposedly is something where you would use this as a signal to short, and you can see what happened. It ended up actually doing the exact opposite with enough time. If it were a short-term trade, then maybe you could have profited by shorting here, but this particular one didn't turn out. Now, of course, no matter what the trading strategy is, even if the odds are in your favor, it doesn't mean you're going to win every single time. And so maybe with Apple, it typically does pay out to short when there's a death cross, and this just might be an outlier where this one just didn't work out the way it historically, tends to. But it's still interesting to see exactly how these things play out. Now, how do you enable these moving averages on your stock chart? It depends on your trading platform, but most trading platforms do cater to moving averages. And this particular one, this is Thinkorswim. You can right-click the chart, you go to Studies, Add Study, and then it's under Moving Averages here. And so you can just add the moving averages, and again, for the death cross, it's a 50-period moving average and a 200-period moving average. If you have any questions about the death cross or about the stock market in general, you can contact us anytime. Our email address is support@stockmarketguides.com.